Okay.
If you happen to hear like ambient noise, I'll try to be more on mute, but if you happen to hear ambient noise in my background, it's because my wife is also on like a panel tonight with IRTF talking about like service work industry during the pandemic and stuff like that. So she works at a restaurant. She was invited to, and she's been, I don't know, involved in some other organizational kind of stuff around that. So that's, I don't know if you can hear it, but if not, that's great. If so, that's what it is.
Okay, let me go double check to make sure we're live and then we'll get going.
Debbie, I think we are. I see the message.
Okay, great.
On the top of my screen that we are recording live on YouTube.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else can see that or not. Okay, I see not.
First item is the minutes from the Planning and External Relations Committee in February. Any comments or corrections? The majority of the Planning and External Relations will be reports from Kim, and I'm going to turn it over to her now.
All right. Two things to update you on. The first on the agenda is the Noble Community Engagement Survey. And I pulled up that PowerPoint. Debbie, I don't know if we can share that or not, or if anybody has seen it. I thought Nancy shared it with all of you. But okay, I'm seeing nods. So I'll just briefly go through that. We opened the survey for about 2 to 3 weeks. We received 468 responses, and most people were very, very familiar with Noble. Only 98 out of 468 said that they weren't very familiar. And then we asked how people use the branch pre-COVID. The vast majority, so it was you can select as many responses as were applicable. 66% said checking out materials, 47% said browsing, high computer usage, 24%, which is what we kind of thought. Programming was a little bit lower than we might have expected. No programming got over 20%. And then the other big area was relaxing or spending time someplace other than home. Like I said, that was 24%. So that's how people were using the branch pre-COVID. When we talked about what we need, the responses do indicate that we need more space. 72% of respondents said that. And then everything else was a little bit smaller. 8% said we needed more programming and meeting space, and everything else was a little bit lower. So really, it just kind of justifies what we've been saying, in that branch is bursting at the seams, especially when kids are in school and out of school. It's very popular. It's our only branch north of Mayfield, and this is what we knew. Some of the
so Kim, I have a question on this survey comments pie chart. The dark blue behavior on what does that refer to specifically?
It might be that we know that there are a certain number of people that will complain about the behavior of others. A lot of times that has to do with children being next to an elementary school. That place can get loud and boisterous after school. It's all hands on deck with the staff, because they know they're going to get a large population after school. And some people, frankly, don't like that. They want the library to be quieter. The kids don't have a lot of space to move around in after school. They're really trying to keep them all in the basement. I mean, it's allowed for them to get down to the basement. They're loud if they're going to the teen room. There's just really not a lot of space, and that creates noise. So, and for some people, that they want quieter children or quieter teens, maybe quieter adults too. But that's what that goes in line with comments that we hear from customers from time to time. And it's what Constance and her staff can sometimes hear as well.
Can you remind us, so I can put in the minutes, when the Zoom community engagement meetings are? What dates are they?
They are the dates opposite of these meetings. So next Monday, March 8th, and then 2 weeks after that. So that should be March 22nd. And those 2 meetings begin at 7 o'clock via Zoom, or I think via Zoom, perhaps. That I'm 95% sure they're via Zoom.
It'll be on our webpage, I'm sure.
Yes, yes. I'll continue on. There are just a couple more slides. Specific comments. Lots of people talked about how great the staff is, that the branch is the heart of the neighborhood. They would like to see more computers. They would like to see more programs. They'd like to see business support, accessibility without using the stairs or the elevator. So we know it can be tricky. I'm sure it's a complete pain for families to get strollers down the elevator. It's not huge, so that can take a lot of time for people trying to go downstairs for programs if they have to use if they have strollers. So all things that we kind of knew. Nothing was really a shock to us. Nancy created a slide that said that we need separate spaces for early childhood, school age, and teens, because we know it's an important place for the children that go to Noble, Oxford, and the Monticello Middle School, and also any homeschooled children as well. We know we need more computers. Pre-COVID, the computers at Noble were occupied a majority, if not all of the time. It's an area where we have high computer usage. And then also it's the refugee hub, which we've known for a long time. And that branch has also been the home of ESL classes for many, many years. So those things are not really happening right now, but the precedent is there, and we'd like to continue those services. Some of the concerns that came out of the survey, a lot of people stated as much as they want all of these things, they don't want taxes to be increased, which is understandable during these uncertain economic times. They don't want to close the branch. They don't want to lose the hub of the neighborhood, which is what we don't want either. There's concern about behavior. There's concern about noise. So having a separate quiet space would be good. But they don't want to lose that warm and cozy feeling there. We need more computers. We need more materials, particularly books. And there were concerns about not having enough parking, which we also know. So there's a slide in here about the desire to keep the historic character. The branch was built in 1937. People feel very attached, and they feel it's very warm, approachable, cozy place. So us, the next slide I'm referring to is that we currently have money saved. We don't believe we need any new taxes to do this project. We have the BNR fund. We can apply for grants, and then we do know that more space would mean that we would need more staff. But as Nancy puts in the slide, we are very efficient. We would work very closely with Constance to determine the right staffing complement, whether that be more reference staff. Most likely we would keep circulation staff at the level that it is now, but just thinking about reference staff and the things that we want to do. We know the Noble staff, both in adult and the youth services department, they do a lot of outreach. Steve Sanders, who is an adult librarian, he's been our conduit to the Nepalese community for the 3.5 years he's been here. He does a lot of outreach, particularly for an adult services librarian, but we want to continue to build on that. And so we see a lot of opportunity.
Real quick, Kim, I just had a question. I think it was
Yeah.
on the previous slide or maybe two before where it was like sort of the list of concerns.
Yeah.
And one of them was we don't need any branches. We only need Lee Road.
Yes, so
Is that something that came up a lot or was just that was one person who said that?
I don't think it did. I think Nancy felt like doing our due diligence, we should put that in there. That was surprising. But to me, that just speaks to that we really can't be solely road centric, that we forget about the neighborhoods. And especially Noble is the branch that is furthest away from Lee Road. So if we were, I mean, that's not even a consideration.
Well, I guess I was just wondering, like,
Yeah.
did this come up from a lot of surveys or was it just like one survey that came off of?
I have, it's been a few days since I've seen all the surveys. I think
Sure.
I only saw it in a couple of places.
Okay.
So
Because I'm just
again,
wondering, is that an actual concern of the community or is just this like one or two people who,
well,
we can probably guess like, who those couple of people are who respond to everything,
Right.
like are always going to be opposed to every levy and always be opposed to any kind of taxpayer dollars
Right.
being spent on anything related to the library or schools or anything. Or
And-
is this like actually a lot of people saying this? Because
I don't think it is. And
it seems pretty out there to me. I mean, it is a hub of the
does
community. So if it's just like one or two people, then I don't even know why it made it on the presentation. But that's just
I
me.
don't either, Max, and I'm sorry I don't have a precise number for you. I go back to thinking about the 98 people out of the 460 something that said that they were not very familiar with Noble, but they still answered the survey. And so it could be someone who is disgruntled about taxes or is under a false assumption about how much they're paying in library taxes versus maybe other kinds of taxes. So it's hard to know without me having access to that data of, okay, if a respondent answered that, what are some of the other things that they said?
Sure, that's
So,
fine. I figure that they're probably like the same couple of people who
Yeah.
are probably saying those same things. And I was curious to see like how much that, and I know I won't have an answer today, but maybe if we could look into it to see what kind of, I think that might indicate a concerted activity against, future levies or, things that might be coming up down the line at some point, or just, or if it is like an actual major community concern, which I'm guessing it's not.
If
right.
if it is
And I
only,
really don't think of it. I'm sorry, because
if it is only just one or two responses, should we even have it in there?
That's what I was asking.
Because-
I can check with Nancy about that. I mean, I think that she might have been working on this on Friday, and I didn't see it till today because I took a vacation day on Friday. So I can ask her more in-depth questions about that. And we can always revise the PowerPoint slide.
Yeah.
I think she put that together for all of you.
Yeah, on my
Yeah,
end,
I just asked because it seems like if it's being given a place of privilege on the PowerPoint out of like, out of several hundred responses, if
Yeah.
only like two or three people said that, then, whatever we enter into the public record here is going to be public. And, I think by putting it in the PowerPoint, it gives it more credence than there might actually be. However, if there are like 100 people who said that, which I doubt, but if there are, then we should know that
We
too.
should look at that. Yes. All right. I will continue on. We just have a couple more slides. The next slide's about the Noble Corridor neighborhood. We believe, of course, it's very important to keep Noble Road vibrant. I already mentioned that the Noble branch is the only one north of Mayfield, but we know that that area needs the computer access. They need a walkable branch, and they need a place to have meetings, which has been difficult with the size of the Noble branch meeting room. When we get back to in-person board meetings, those of you who have been to Noble for the board meetings know we can't even meet in the meeting room. We have to use the team room. The next slide is about the Future Heights study, and Nancy put that as a link for everyone to take a look. The recommendations from the study are about how we can grow that area, how we can make it more attractive and enticing to people. how we want to participate in the plans to make that an area that is serving all ages, that is growing, learning, and sorry, somebody was at my door for a minute, so I lost track. And that having it be the centerpiece for our civic life in that area. So the final slide is about, so now what? We are in negotiations to buy more property, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. We're going to keep listening. We ask all of you to, if you haven't, to stop by the Noble Neighborhood Branch, especially now that we're open again. And obviously, we're going to ask other people in the community to do that too, and then to watch our website for new information. So I know we've already been talking a little bit about this. Are there any other questions about this?
I could chime in and say, when I was reviewing the results of the survey with Nancy, with the people that said, what do we need branches for? She said something to me along the lines of, for full disclosure, we shouldn't say just things that people say nice about us. I think she wanted to put that in to show that, you know, there are some people that do have some negative comments, but we'll certainly take back to Nancy, your concerns about if that's just one or two people, is it really worth, like you said, Max, giving it credence by making it part of the PowerPoint? But I think she was looking at full disclosure. There are some people that don't like it, so.
Sure, and that's fine. It's sort of like the argument about climate change, right? Like in the idea that like 99% of scientists believe that climate change is happening and 1% don't. And so you don't need to have both, you know, on your panel, right? You just, if it's skewing that much one way, we don't need to give voice to, you know, to people who are in such a drastic minority in opinion about that. But again,
I would beg to differ. I do believe that I interpreted when Kim went over that was the cause for her putting it there, is that there are some negative comments. It's okay to have them, you know, listed there. If it was one person, two people, it's listed. They at least have their stance. This is a public forum, so we do need to include, even if Max, as you just pointed out, we wouldn't necessarily have that percentage represented on a panel. Yeah, in a survey and the responses, it needs to be listed. So I think that that's valid and should remain there. But you certainly, sure. Deborah can ask Nancy why she was and get back to us on that.
Yeah, or maybe, I mean, if it's an anomaly though, maybe there could be a note saying like, this is one person saying this or two people saying.
I think, yeah. I mean, like the way it's presented right now, it's just on this list and we don't know it's an anomaly. We don't know how much or how many people. And I feel like that is kind of amplifying it. I mean, I think, you know, I mean, the thing is, like, I mean, the survey is, we're not going to get rid of Noble, right? Like right. The survey is about like, hey, what can we do to kind of make the branch better? What role does it play? And I feel like that kind of response, like to me, that is like a kid just like writing some like BS answer on a test that has nothing to do with the actual question. They're just being a little snot. And I think like we can certainly, you know, when whoever's doing the presentation and doing the forum, I think that's an idea that we want to make sure we address. Like, why is there a need for the Noble branch when we have these other branches? And we can include that idea in there. So we are still addressing it. But to just, I mean, I really feel, unless we're giving numbers like, okay, 2 people out of 498 said this.
But that usually is what a survey does, because a survey, such as when the school district does it, the hospital, they're going to give you a pie chart showing you what percentage of people answer.
But there's no pie chart here.
I disagree.
Just a list.
Yeah, I disagree. So I beg to differ with you that we should not include something that perhaps we're not moving forward on it. It doesn't really compel us to do anything, but we not listed on the survey responses. That's just, I beg to differ.
I mean, I think if we included a pie chart, like if we included the number of responses, the number of people who said it, I'm okay with that because then it's 2 people.
Right.
And
Well,
we
the
know
survey
that.
usually does that. When you put a survey out for
But
someone else to look at now, just like we're looking at that draft that she sent us, you know, a person is usually going to tell you there were 184 responses. 50% felt this, 28%. That is what a survey usually does. So I do not agree that discluding someone's opinion, even if it's negative, even if none of us agree or feel compelled to move on it, that it should be included, even if you feel it was a snotty answer, that no, these are taxpayers. These are the people we are responsive to, even when we don't agree. And I think their response should stay listed on the survey.
and
Well,
I,
and I'm not saying that they shouldn't stay listed in the data or the survey that we have, but by listing it along with everything else,
As the
just as
summary.
important as everything else, I think may disproportionately give it, like, amplify it more than it needs to be.
Like
How
right
could
now, there
something
is
that's
no-
1%, perhaps not even 1%, 2%, any of our citizens that are reading, they have great discretion to be able to take that in and do with it what they want to do with it. Again, I just agree, so we can move on. Deborah's going to find out from Nancy why she included it. We can get some numbers on the responses. I just didn't think.
Quantify the responses from
Yes.
that.
yeah, I think that would be better if we included, like,
I
the way it
agree.
is right now. I think there's that amplification
But
potential,
that was just a draft. She told us that when she sent it to us. So we knew that wouldn't be the final way it would probably look, but okay.
Right, and we're just giving our feedback on the draft, saying that if you want to include this in here, we should know, how important it actually is in relation to other issues.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think we can talk about like what we think about what we'll act on it or not. But I think that yes, if this were to be out in the public record and a bunch of people see, wait, what? They're getting rid of branches. I mean, you know how this stuff starts. So if it's not made clear that this was a piece of feedback we received by a few people and we are including it to be transparent, that's one thing.
Exactly.
But if people start telling a story like, wait, are they closing my branch? So I think we just want to be mindful. I agree with the data quantification. I think if we do that, it should be fine.
Yes.
All right. Anything else about this survey before I move on to talk about the next point, the Compass Consulting Diversity Audit? Okay, I'll move on. This is very brief. We are in the middle of collecting the diversity audit from all of our staff. It is, I've already done mine. I did it sometime last week, so I believe we've given staff the next couple of weeks. Debbie, feel free to jump in.
I think the deadline's next Monday.
Okay. I just, once you do something, you kind of forget about the due date because it's completed. So it's probably a 10 to 15 minute survey about how serious, the questions all obviously range, but they're about how serious that admin and the library take certain issues on EDI, and they separate them out, and how about hiring practices and policies and just in general. So it probably took me between 10 and 15 minutes to do this survey. So I imagine it wouldn't take any other staff member that much longer to do it. We will share those results with all of you once we get them. So I imagine Nancy will be able to share that. If our deadline is next Monday, then I imagine she'll be able to share that with you at the board meeting in 2 weeks. So I can't, because I've already taken it, I don't have access to it anymore. It's gone into the ether.
I think the main framework was asking about equity, inclusion, and then diversity, and asking, do you think the staff do this? Do you think the administration did that? So it had more questions than I expected, but it was framed in, how do you think the staff handles these issues? And then how do you think the administration handles these issues?
All right. So again, that went to all staff members, and hopefully we get as close to 100% participation as we possibly can. All right. So Debbie,
The next item is officially, there will be a joint meeting.
The survey.
I'm sorry, do you have something, Gabe?
Oh, yeah. I was just asking, how was the staff prepared to take the survey? Like, were there discussions around diversity, equity, inclusion? I know those were questions in the survey, but was that explained prior to them, or?
We've all gone through the training, right, Kim, between the groundwater and Tamika's been here to do training on all of this. It might have been a while, but.
Right, and I would say not all, because we have had new staff members since we were undergoing that training. So I'll tell you what, I'm gonna look at my email, because I saved the email. I just can't get back into the survey. But Compass Consulting sent out the instructions, and so everything came from them as our outside consultant. But I'm looking in my email right now.
There were a couple of paragraphs explaining it before you got to do it. So they did have some explanations, but we've had, new staff haven't gone through training, but last spring we had everyone going through training. Well, while Kim's looking, why don't I go into.
I don't have that anymore.
Joint meeting of the City Council from Cleveland Heights, University Heights, and the School Board and the Library Board on Monday, April 12th at 7 p.m. It's going to be a Zoom meeting hosted by the Board of Education. We're still working out the particulars with them, whether it's Zoom or Edge or one of the teams or one of these things, but Nancy's been in touch with the people from the school district about setting it up, and they'll be.
Sorry, Deb, did you say 7 p.m.?
7 p.m. is what the latest I've heard.
Okay, thanks.
On Monday the 12th. And there will be a set agenda that each one of the 4 entities will have some topics to bring up. So I'm sure before maybe we'll see something by the time we have our April committee meeting, we can determine whether or not there's specific topics that you want to have us asked to put on the agenda.
Is that in addition to the 5th and the 19th? So
Yes.
We'll still do our regular ones and then in the middle, okay.
We'll still have our committee meeting and board meeting, and then this is the joint meeting will be in between the two. Any luck on the email, Kim? Okay.
I don't have it. I have my confirmation from SurveyMonkey that I did the survey.
The next item is personnel. Does anyone have any questions or corrections on the personnel minutes? Which I think I ended up putting in out of order in the agenda. Not hearing anything. We put an item called salary discussion on the agenda because Max has exchanged some emails with Nancy about minimum wage and that, and we thought that you'd like to bring up some talk about it, Max, with all the board members, and then we can chime in with what we're doing and where we're looking to go. So you want to fill the board members in on your emails, Max?
Yes, great. Thank you, Deb. So yeah, I reached out to Nancy recently about instituting a $15 minimum wage library-wide. And so I just kind of wanted to go over a little bit what my thinking is and just sort of lay the groundwork, at least to start this discussion. It's not anything that needs to happen right away, or it might be, depending on what happens with the federal government over the next couple of weeks. But generally, so like, as you know, I work for a labor union. I work for the Service Employees International Union, Local 1. They have been, generally our focus and my focus has been on low wage service work and increasing wages for people who do that kind of work. So basically, we want to talk about why a $15 minimum wage. So it's my feeling, and it's my feeling, not only as a unionist in my professional life and personal life, but also as a library board member, that any work that is worth doing, that requires human labor to do it, like whether it be a page or assistant circulation or whatever, that job should be paid a living wage, not just a minimum wage set by the state of Ohio that we then kind of base our wages off of. So anything that's, I feel it's like essential to the functioning of the organization, which pages are, and everybody who works for the library should be paid a living wage. So the background here is that the Fight for 15 started in 2012 to highlight the difference between minimum wage and what would actually be considered a living wage that you could actually survive on. And that should, and focusing on like, how do we make that the actual minimum wage that people are paid for their labor? So it gained momentum over the last 9 years. As people know, if you read the newspaper, you see like Amazon went to $15 an hour, Target went to $15 an hour, Costco has been there for a while, and I think actually just increased theirs recently. Disney, Ben & Jerry's, Wells Fargo, even some very typically irresponsible employers have gone to $15 an hour as their minimum rate for their employees, including in 2000, I want to say 16 or 17, the city of Cleveland did the same thing. So the city of Cleveland made $15, their minimum wage for all employees of the city of Cleveland, which was a drastic increase for a lot of their people, including janitors that we represent, who went from about $11 and change or $10 and change to $15 and more overnight. And more recently, the federal government, as you may or may not know, has committed that in the next couple of weeks, my contacts in the White House, our contacts in the White House, have said it's going to happen that all federal contractors, which are people who work for private contractors doing federal government work, will also have a $15 minimum wage across the country. And Democrats, minus the very conservative ones like Joe Manchin, are also pushing for a national $15 minimum wage. So this is something that's happening now, and it shouldn't be really surprising anybody. I mean, anybody who's, on this call knows that like making $15 an hour isn't even a whole lot of money or anything like that. So we look at Cleveland Heights and University Heights. So in Cleveland Heights, the median average income, or the median income, not average, but the median income is $32,305 a year for an individual, which if you're a full-time worker working 2,080 hours a year comes up to $1,553 an hour. In University Heights, the individual one is a little bit lower, but the household one is much higher than in Cleveland Heights, which is interesting. But so it's right around there, it's like $1,480 an hour for University Heights for the individual. So what does this mean for the library? The thing that I'm envisioning, and again, this is something really to discuss, and we'll have to do some studies, but it would mean a percentage-wise, a large wage increase for our lowest paid employees. Which would be like the pages, and then probably some adjustments on the way up because, if you take them to $15 an hour, then some people who are right at 15 or 16 might want a little bit more. But, we're not talking nitty gritty right now, but just in concept, if we're talking about going from $10 an hour to $15 an hour, I understand that's a 50% wage increase. But I'm not talking about doing a similar wage increase for the people who are already at the highest levels of our wage schedule at the library. If there needs to be like a little bit of adjustments to keep a certain gap there, then I understand. And then, what happens if we pay $15 an hour? Really, I think of it as an investment in the community just as much as improving a property, maintaining, a good collection of books, media, all that kind of stuff. Our employees, we often think about like what public good the library is. And a lot of that has to do with, services that we provide, programming that we provide, but we're also a very large employer here. And I think that the majority of people who work for us, I think all the people who work for us live in the region at least, and I would guess that the majority live in the community that pays taxes back into our library system. They also spend money locally in small businesses, which could use that money more now than ever. Let's see, I wrote down some other notes. The library has been extremely responsible with its money over the last couple of years. I mean, I give a lot of credit to leadership in the library, Debbie, Nancy, Kim, Lori. Everybody who does that kind of work has done just a fantastic job. The way that we were able to deal with the pandemic over the last year has been really great. To give a little bit of background, so I'm the most senior person right now on the library board. And when I started in 2017, I was told that we were going to be looking for a a levy in 2024. And the joke was that like I got in right at the right time because I wouldn't have to be on the board when we went for another levy, because 2023 is my last year. And now we're looking at like 25, 26, potentially 27, stretching that out because we have done so well with our money. So I think this is something that we can afford. And in really like asking ourselves, is it the right thing to do ethically? I believe so. Is it the right thing to do economically? I also believe so. And is it the right thing to do politically? I think the more that we can get ahead of the federal government, our very conservative state government, which will never raise the wage on its own beyond, the 10 or 15 cents that they tack onto it every year. I think it's the right thing to do politically as well. I think that, the Cleveland Heights University Heights Public Libraries we were the first to go fine free in the region. We have the most innovative collaborations of any of the libraries in this region. I think that we really set a gold standard across the region, and a progressive one, right? We very bravely did the what's it called? The Drag Queen Story Hour. We stood up to the government on that when Larry Householder was making his threats towards libraries. So I think that, everybody wants to be a progressive until it comes to, spending some money. But I think that this is a good progressive move, and it does a really good thing by the community as well. Ron Holland was the board president during my first year, so you guys probably don't know him. And he is a school administrator, I think an assistant principal. Was that right, Deb? Yeah, he's an assistant principal in Mayfield. And he said on his last day, he said, if there's one thing I wish about the library is that I wish they paid more money, because he worked here as a student. And he said that if they paid more money, like this is something that I would have made a career out of. Right. So I think we want to attract and retain people into these positions. Like I said, I really think any job worth doing, any job that needs to be done should be paid a living wage for it. Whether or not that was the intent when it first started out. We all know, like when McDonald's first started, it was a job for teenagers to, make a couple bucks during the summertime. Now the average age of a McDonald's worker is in their late 30s. So with a family. So we know that, the economy is different than it was when a lot of these jobs were created. And I think that we really need to evaluate, where our wages are at. What does the market really mean when people talk about the market? Well, the market pays this, the market pays that. The market is a lot of people pointing their finger at each other saying like, well, what is this guy doing? What is that guy doing? The market also says that, Jeff Bezos and Tesla guy, Elon Musk, should be like the richest men in the world because they're, geniuses or whatever, when we all, I think, probably know that's not true. So anyway, those are just my thoughts. I think what I would like to see is either to hear your feedback, but also, what I'd like to see then is do some models, right? What does our budget look like? I don't want to just jump into this willy-nilly. I do want to see what the economic impact would be like if we maintain the same amount of full-time employees, take into account the fact that we're going to be recalling employees, as the pandemic winds down. We're going to need more staff. As we expand Noble, what is that going to look like? Yeah, Kim?
I just want to clarify for you about recalling employees. Basically, everybody's been recalled.
Everybody's been recalled, but we may need to be hiring more.
Right. The only people that haven't been are some, but not all of our pages. So some pages have, some came back in the fall. We then just last month in February added more page hours. So we recalled, I believe 4, and we're doing that by a seniority. Some of our pages we lost because they were high schoolers who have gone to college. So they, in the natural attrition, we would have lost them anyway because they left the area to go to school. But we have very, very few. I would imagine it's less than 10 pages that are still on a potential recall. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and just thinking about like the economy and like how on paper the economy is soaring, the economy is going great, but wages have pretty much remained stagnant. And why is that? People just say, well, it's the market. What does that mean? That's really, it's kind of a construct that we only exist because enough of people kind of believe it and are told it. And so I think it's really good right now for us. We're in a really good position. We can afford to do the right thing. You know, a lot of people, you know, I bargain contracts all the time, trying to get people out of poverty, trying to get people into that $15, at least $15 minimum wage area. And, you know, what we hear a lot is, well, we can't afford it, our client, blah, 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 this and that. I think based on our budget, I think we're in a position to be able to do it, which I think counts us among, you know, a lucky few public organizations that are actually able to do this. And I think we should continue in our position, leading the way, you know, in this region. Even though we might not be the biggest library, I think we're certainly the most forward thinking. And anyway, it's a conversation I just wanted to get started.
And to piggyback on what we are already doing, and we typically do every 2 years, we pay an independent consultant to do a survey of what our salaries are, going out and looking in the market, and that'll be done in the next few months. And then also the Northeast Ohio Regional Library Association, they're doing a survey of salaries of just libraries that should be completed by the end of the summer. So, you know, we'll have the one that's like the real market of what do computer people get paid in the private sector versus what do we pay computer assistants. Then we'll have the one for the libraries to look at. And Nancy and Lori and I and Kim have been talking about this and already looked at doing some budget projections of that. So we're working towards this, but this was like the opening forum to see, you know, let Max present it and see what other board members felt.
Yeah, and just so, I mean, just to put my cards on the table, I mean, people say, I hear it literally multiple times a day, well, you know, the market dictates this or the market dictates that. And like I said, I really think that whether or not, you know, we're paying the same as the private sector, if the private sector is paying $11 an hour, that's just too low. It's not enough money for somebody to live on. So that's just sort of my thoughts. And anyway, I just wanted to get the conversation started. So, thanks.
Thanks,
I'm a
Nick.
fan of the idea.
Sorry.
That was all I had to say, Patty. Sorry, I didn't realize you were talking. Yeah, I like it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just was going to say, regardless of what the market, blah, 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 I think we have to investigate this. I agree with you, Max. Like the library is too much a leader to not try to get ahead of, you know, whatever might end up happening that looks like a had to be done sort of situation. I thanks for distilling all of this, because I know it can get very political and very kind of muddy really quick. But yeah, when I ran the numbers, I'm like, oh my God, 31 grand, that's full time. So imagine a page working, you know, 20 hours a week. It's half that. Like, there's no way, like even a college student, like that's not, you can't do enough with that. So thank you. I really appreciate your time on this.
Did you, sorry, I just got here from the city council meeting, which went in a very different direction than I thought it would. So anyway, but we'll talk about that in a second. As far as we've already started to study it. We've studied a couple of different ways that, I mean, so I don't know if you said this, but we have been raising the bottom for a couple of years now. And when we do that, it affects everyone going up. So it can get very expensive very quickly, to the point of influencing what our benefits can be, and also if we can add more staff to provide services. So we just want to make sure that, I mean, I don't think that anyone would disagree that it would be great if we could do it. And it's just a matter of how we can do it. And over time, I think it will have to be phased in, because it would be too much of a shock to do it right away. But we definitely have been, it could really throw a lot of things out of whack, because we have internal equity issues as well. So I've already started working on it. I've shown Debbie about 6 spreadsheets. Give us a little bit of time. Let us do the study in the spring. And then or I guess it's the fall.
We usually get the survey by.
Right. NEO's doing their study in April, and then we'll have our study. So I promise that we will have a thorough monetary discussion. In fact, Debbie and I even talked about having a retreat to go over budget issues, because we have many competing priorities. And we need to kind of just sift those out because it's a lot all at once to think about salaries and buildings and future and levies. And that's the picture that we have to tie them all together with. So we will definitely do that.
Thanks,
I
Nancy.
think that it's important to emphasize that we're not just looking at comparison for market, what other libraries are paying, but that whole idea of a living wage and wanting to do what's fair for the workers. I think just to emphasize that, I'm glad that we're investigating it, but I think that we need to
honestly, I think it'll take about 6 months until we're ready to really do something.
I think that is, we appreciate you, Max, getting the ball rolling on that. It's definitely worth looking into. And I would hope that as we've done previously, we could be the leader on something. And Nancy, even with what you're expressing, that it wouldn't be something we could immediately roll out, but what we can do is get a concrete plan of how we will roll it out. So it's okay if it's not, gonna hit, June, July, whatever the case may be, or everyone all at once, but there should be a consummate plan of how we will get there with the end date in mind. So I'm interested too. I'm interested more importantly, because you came in after Max was saying, I was already thinking that how can we get it done? It's not, it would be obvious that we could not probably do it all at once and that there would be some pushback. But if we go in with the mindset of give us all the information we need so that we can then take the next step to get it done.
Right. It may also mean, we have some ideas about how the library the staffing should be structured and how that might change. And depending on which way we go, that will definitely have an impact on that too. So lots of moving parts, but no real opposition. We just have to figure out where all this fits together.
And usually I do a 5-year forecast, and as we're getting closer to 24, 25, 26, when we've been looking at a levy. When I started here in 15, I was even going down 10 years, looking at what can we do with buildings and staffing, prior to a levy. So now it's getting a little bit easier because it's less projections and more concrete data. So that'll be done probably in May when we have to do the tax budget for the county too. Tyler, did you have something to add?
I did a couple of times, but people said exactly what I was going to say, so I don't need to repeat it. But the one thing I think I'd be interested into seeing, which I know Debbie will probably do, is if over the next 6 months we determine here's a path to this $15 minimum wage, but it means we would need to push a levy in whatever 23 or whatever the consequences sounds like a negative term, but just what would the repercussions be, because we would be thinning out the available budget for this in conjunction with Noble, in conjunction with other things. I think that's just important to understand what would need to happen to get to that, surplus to be able to support the minimum wage for everyone.
Right.
And I just think that, also just a good accounting of like where that money would come from. Cause like Tyler, you brought up Noble, like the wages and stuff comes out of the general fund, and Noble will be coming out of building and repairs based on that, the presentation that we were given today, which by the way was great. Loved it. So I think, I think, like I said, I don't anticipate this is going to get resolved overnight. I think it's going to take some good discussions and research, but I just kind of wanted to get the ball rolling on it.
Anyone else? Okay, the next is the minutes for the operations committee meeting from February. Any comments or corrections, additions, deletions? All right, the two items we have that will be on the agenda for voting in March. The first one is to amend the contract with JMC Consulting. I think when I sent the agenda out, I mentioned that I had a brain fart when I put the numbers in for the February agenda, and I wasn't looking at the full year. I was just looking partial. So in order to pay our consultant for the full year of December, as you know, our Coventry HVAC won't be done until December, and she's working with us on other projects. I need to amend that from 15,000 to 36,000. Any questions or comments? And then the next item is technology fund expenditures. Typically, you see this every year in February or March. Last year, when the pandemic came, we shut down any of the big expenditures and it's not there. And the technology fund has, I think, close to $69,000. And for those of you who've been around, we have a very detailed 5-year technology plan of which computers we're going to replace and when. And usually what happens is when the public computers are replaced, then the ones that were in the public might become like circulation catalog computers, or they're cannibalized for pieces, parts, and that. So
Debbie, they usually become staff computers, not catalog computer. We don't have very many catalog computers left. They become staff ones.
Okay. So this is buying more computers, IT towers, and a couple of laptops. Anyone?
Oh, I was just gonna say, we are due to update the technology plan in 2021. I just was looking at it today because it includes a great inventory of all the things we have, and I was trying to figure out how many computers we had at Noble. So you will be seeing it again in the next few months. And for the new people, you haven't seen it for 2 years. So you'll get it's huge.
Very, very detailed.
Nancy, do you want me to get the Noble computer number for you? It's in my file cabinet.
I think I have it. I looked it up. Thank you.
I have a concern about the expenditure that who is that, Matt is asking for?
Yes.
Yeah, so you said that the budget is 67,900.
Around there, yeah.
Right, and we're in Q1. So if he wants to spend 58,737.
It's the only expenditure he'll make during the year. He does this once a year.
He has a plan that he follows, and this is for the whole year. And then if something would really go wrong, we have a technology fund that's not in the general fund, and we can go dip into that if we need to do any big repair or anything. And this is a planned purchase.
I think the fund has over $400,000 in it, and he only asked for between 60 and 70 a year. We transferred money last year for it and the year before, and he hasn't spent it. So there is cash in the BNR fund to cover this, and this is all that he does, or in the technology fund, I'm sorry.
Right.
So this is, it's once a year he purchases the new machines.
And just so everybody knows too, because like this is something that you might not note until you've been here a while. The way like Matt has his technology budget, kind of it's smooth, so it's never like 1 year is all the tech stuff and then it's off for a couple of years. It's done so that like a certain amount of computers get rotated out, and it's happening in a fluid kind of way all the time, so that it keeps costs roughly the same at all times.
Right. So let me finish expressing what I was stating, because I do know that, and that a valid point. And Nancy and Deborah, you basically addressed it. However, I would like something, in writing, if you could email us, because my concern is that no matter what, if 2020 didn't teach us anything, it's some truly unforeseeable things. And I don't think that leaving 9,000 allots for emergency preparedness with just something, weird. I mean, I'm not saying that it would happen, could happen, etc. I don't feel comfortable with leaving only 9,000. So if you could just give me, put out to us in an email what you could back that up with, what you just expressed when you said it.
That's the budget, not the cash in the fund.
I mean, because just as an example, if we had something similar to Texas and something unusual happened, and there's a power surge, and we have, some of our stuff is damaged, it is more than likely not going to happen. I'm just using that as a very, exaggerated example, but and Matt is so competent, and he has done great work, we've seen, but I just don't think that coming off 2020, us spending so much of that budget in quarter 1 without leaving something just in case, I'm not that comfortable with it. So I was going to ask if he could, but you have a better answer, which is great. And I thought there might be a fund that could back it up. So if you could just put that in writing for us.
I sure will. I'll get it out to you this week. Any other items for the committees? The next thing is then we'd like to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation and the purchase of the property. And at the end of executive session, the board will not be voting on anything. So we will stop the meeting when we go into executive session, and it will not be back in public afterwards because the meeting will be adjourned. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Carlisle?
Yes.
Ms. Crenshaw?
Yes.
Ms. Llewellyn?
Yes.
Mr. Gerbach?
Yes.
Ms. Iwamoto?
Yes.
Mr. McTagg?
Yes.
Mr. Toracchio?
Yes.
Okay, let me stop the live stream.